Critical race theory is connected, to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but at the root of all of that is Marxism.
Critical theory and the policies that embrace it in the public school system are actively asking teachers and school officials to lie to parents.
This is becoming an epidemic in America, and I think people are starting to wake up to that. Critical theory believes that every society can be divided up into groups of oppressors and oppressed that are divided along lines of race, sex, or gender, sexuality, religion, wealth, even physical ability. So any number of things, and there's academic disciplines studying each one of those.
That's all under the umbrella of critical theory?
Yes.
Okay. And what would be the purpose of trying to divide society up into these groups of you're the victim and you're the oppressor? Why would anybody try to do that?
It all clicked for me when I was studying the Chinese Revolution, the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Took place in the 60s and 70s for about 10 years. And so what happened in that is Chairman Mao took over control of the schools, and he divided everybody up into 10 classes. You had 5 black classes and 5 red classes. So the black classes were bad classes. You were either a landlord, you were a capitalist, or you were a counter-revolutionary, this broad term that most people got thrown into. And the red classes were good classes. So this was revolutionaries, workers, things like that. And so what they would do is they'd have these struggle sessions with the students, and they would be forced to denounce themselves, denounce their family, to turn in their family for revolutionary behavior. And through that, they were given opportunities. So once the child is torn down and believed they're bad, part of this bad class, they were given the opportunity to perform acts for the state that would move them into the red classes. Critical race theory is being introduced into these classrooms, and it kind of tears kids down. It says you inherit a legacy of oppression, that you are the recipients of this privilege that has been stolen from people of color, that is not, that you are somehow complicit in. So in child terms, you're bad. There's a problem. And then gender theory comes in and really offers them these identities to step into and be celebrated. Like, oh, you're not one of the bad people anymore. You're one of the good people. And gender theory and queer theory is really addressing children, because that's where we develop our identity. We feel comfortable in our body. We learn what it means to be a boy and what it means to be a girl.
Right.
And so gender theory is very focused on teaching kids to reject that binary.
Critical race theory is connected, to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but at the root of all of that is Marxism.
Sometimes I think conversations like this, they're about ideas, and we're rooting things that we see happening on a TikTok video or an Instagram platform back into things like Marxism and critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some people say, I don't understand all of that.
Well, they better understand it, because it's affecting every aspect of their lives. Their churches, the military, every institution has been infiltrated with it. And at the root of Marxism is really a rejection of God, a rejection of the family, a rejection of everything that's stable. And it's all about conflict theory, keeping us at each other's throats. And so there's nothing good that comes from it. Burn your head in the sand will not make it better.
Critical theory and the policies that embrace it in the public school system are actively asking teachers and school officials to lie to parents about their children's curriculum, about what's being taught in the classroom. They're pitting children against one another based on race. They're suggesting that our legal systems and really all of our systems at their heart, at their root, are about power and oppression and those who are oppressed. And it essentially undermines the concept of equal rights. We're also seeing it with regard to sexuality. We have so many cases right now where parents are learning that their children have been socially transitioned at school, and school officials have actively deceived the parents, in one case even changing the records to deceive the parents so that they are able to transition the child to the opposite sex. And not only does this contravene the parents' constitutional rights under the 14th Amendment, but it also harms the children. They're essentially experimenting and turning the children's hearts against their parents. And we know what happens and how we see that take place in Scripture as well.
What are some of the effects that gender theory is having on children in the classroom?
Yeah, and this is where it's really heartbreaking. This is becoming an epidemic in America, and I think people are starting to wake up to that, of kids that are being encouraged to identify and to step into these gender identities. We have adults that are trying to lead them down this path that is leading a lot of kids to transgender identity. And that comes with a whole variety of different procedures that are done to drastically change the body. It's irreversible many times. So they'll put them on puberty blockers if they haven't gone through puberty yet. That just keeps them in an extended, extended childhood until they can determine, which gender do I want to be. We're seeing kids, as young as 13, 14 getting top surgeries where their breasts are removed. It's very horrific stuff. And so there's a very real cost to this ideology being promoted in schools.
And why do you think parents are allowing this to happen?
I think that for too long, we've bought this, the idea that the teachers are the experts, that the school administrators, they're the experts. I'm just the parent. I can't, I don't need, I can't really speak into this because I don't have a degree in gender studies or whatever. And so we end up kind of delegating that responsibility to the experts in the classroom, and we believe that what they're telling us. Like, many parents will be told, like, if you don't affirm, your daughter's new identity, then your daughter's going to commit suicide. Like, that's just flat out, what's going to happen. And so these parents, are horrified by this, obviously, and so many of them will, come alongside and affirm this out of this fear that if I don't, embrace this new identity, that there's going to be great harm to their child.
I think parents need to know that their schools are not necessarily safe places, and their private academies are not necessarily safe places, and that they really have to monitor what's taking place at every kind of educational institution. And I think that with some parents, they feel very Christian parents, that they send their children to a Christian school,
Yes.
and they think they're in a safe place, and that's not necessarily true. And it's certainly not true for the colleges, because we know that they have been infiltrated, but also the academies have been infiltrated. So there's no substitute for parental involvement, but also for actively sitting down, talking with your child, finding out what's on their minds, finding out what they're being taught. And one of the tricks that's being done now is that in some schools, they're not sending homework home with the children because they don't want the parents to know what they're doing.
So, Kristen, on a practical level, what can parents ask the teachers and those who are leading their kids' school or church or whatever it is where they're seeing these problems?
Well, first of all, I would recommend that parents go to our website at adflegal.org. There's a parental rights page, and on that page, you can have access to a parental rights toolkit. And I didn't write it, so I can't take credit for it, but I think it is the best resource that we have ever produced, particularly on parental rights. It goes through where our rights are, where they're found in the law. It also gives practical ideas on questions to ask. So first of all, one of the suggestions is ask your kids. We don't often start with the most easy resource that we have.
That's right.
And encourage your kids to tell you if there are discussions going on in the classrooms that would contravene their values, that might bring up sexual orientation or gender identity, that would disparage their faith. Ask your kids about those conversations. There are also public records requests that can be made. And again, one of the things I love about this toolkit is that it identifies the tricks of the trade, so to speak. We know that school officials in some instances actively deceive parents. And so it tells parents, here's what to ask for and how to ask for it. You should be reviewing their curriculum.
So
You
good.
should see what is in their classrooms. And then lastly, it also identifies federal statutes that allow you to get additional access and helps you to understand that you should be supporting laws and policies that protect the right to accountability, which is transparency in the classroom, that ensures choice, educational choice, so you don't have to send your children to schools that violate your values, policies that allow for opt-in to curriculums or opt-out of curriculums, as well as transparency in terms of things that are going on in the classroom that relate to your child. You should know about those things, and you have a right to know about them. So it walks you through how to do that.
I absolutely love that. Highly recommend we do exactly what you're saying. Go to ADF and get a hold of this parental rights toolkit. And getting into these types of things is not really just us wandering into the legal weeds here. I mean, this is the heart of the garden. This is the future of our children. It's their hearts and their minds. And just as the scriptures say that we have pastors to train the believers for the work of the ministry, the pastor's not supposed to do all the ministry. He's training the believers for the work of the ministry. We have ADF and Kristen Waggoner and others like her who are teaching us as citizens how to do the work of the ministry of holding on to our rights, our constitutional rights, our God-given rights. They can't do all the work. They're teaching us how to do it with toolkits like this.